How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to MojoGrip. Mike here. Today we're going to check out an airplane that I know all too well. We're checking out the Diamond DA40. Stay tuned. Diamond DA40. This aircraft is my first acquaintance to flying. I trained in one that looked just like this. This particular one, I believe, is a 03 model and is currently down for maintenance, but I thought it was an opportunity for me to go through it. I spent so much time flying this thing that it's hard for me to imagine that I will be flying a different airplane. Outside of the Sling TSi, this is one of the airplanes that I'm most familiar with, the Diamond DA40. And while we're up here, let's check out the power plant. So all DA40s are equipped with the Lycoming IO 360. As you can see, it's a pretty heavy engine, and it has 180 horsepower, and I think it's a great fit for the weight of this airplane. Okay, now the DA40 was introduced as a trainer and also as a personal aircraft. Let me go up here so you see more of the engine here. Again, this one here is down for maintenance, and it has a 3-bladed prop. As you can see, it is a constant speed prop, as you will find in most Diamond DA40. The DA20 may not. That's the smaller version of this airplane. This airplane is a 4-seater, and another great thing about the design of the DA40 is that you have 3 doors. So you've got this main, well, technically 2 doors, but it's like you have a big canopy up front, which will allow both entry up front, and then you've got that garland door back there. One thing also that's, to me, quite unique to the DA40, at least when I look at other low wings in the same performance class, this thing has quite the wing. It's pretty long. Okay, you can think of a DA40 as a gliding machine. Okay, this airplane outperforms just about every other airplane in the same class when it comes to the gliding ratio. The only airplane that outperforms it in that category is, guess what? The Sling TSi. Okay, now I'm gonna try my best to give you as much information on this, but like I said, when you look at the wings of this thing, it is pretty long, and the flaps and ailerons too. Generally speaking, you would have different sizes when it comes to, in terms of length. So you look at the flaps and you look at the ailerons, and you see like they're literally about the same length. That's also something that I find unique to this aircraft compared to other airplanes. Even on my Sling TSi, I'll show you where you would usually see one that is shorter. Okay, now let's move forward. Now, when it comes to the look and finish of the Diamond DA40, it's a matter of preference. Okay, you'd ask some pilot, they absolutely do not like the look of this airplane, but I love it. As a matter of fact, I love this T-tail here. This is one of the most attractive aspects of this airplane, and I remember when I saw it for the first time, it just looks majestic on the ramp. And also, the DA40 is well known for its safety record, and that's why it's one of the best planes to train in if you can afford it, because it's a little bit high up there in price when it comes to how much it costs to rent. Now, speaking of this T-tail, it's not unique to the DA40, but rarely will you see other airplanes in the same class with a T-tail. For example, you look at the Cessna in front of us, a lot of the airplanes you find in similar performance has that. So like an upside down type of T-tail. So you have usually the stabilizer, the horizontal stabilizer, and the elevators at the bottom, and then you have your rudder right there. Whereas with this design, you've got the opposite, where the elevator and the horizontal stabilizer is up top, and then you've got the rudder below. Now, you know, the design, again, they thought about safety and performance and how they could have a middle ground with this airplane, and I think they did a great job with it. Again, it's one of the safest airplanes you can fly. The Diamond DA40 does not have a parachute, but the engine failure procedure is fairly easy for this thing. You have a good glide speed at 71, 72 knots. And this thing can travel, depending on what altitude you're in. From the numbers I remember, it's about 16 miles per 1,000 feet. So for every 1,000 feet that you lose, again, assuming that there was an issue of engine failure, for every 1,000 feet that you lose, you can travel up to 16 miles in this thing. Again, you see those wings, those things keep you floating. It's a really neat airplane, and it's a fairly easy airplane to fly in, whether for training or if you're using this as a personal aircraft, because this is also a really good cross-country airplane. Now, let's go in the interior, because actually I'll start back here. So unlike other planes where you have a baggage compartment somewhere through the side of the airplane, the DA40, because of this large door in the back, you don't need the extra door for baggage. So you see, this is easy entry to the back of the airplane. I have sat both back here and up there, and they're both as comfortable, I can tell you that. And I remember the first time I sat in the back, we went on like a 50 or 60 miles trip, and I was the only one sitting back here, and I had plenty of leg room. So it's a very comfortable airplane to sit in, to carry passengers. And then you look behind here to get access to the baggage compartment. You can either push the seat down, or you have enough room to just put your bags in. And when you think of the construction materials for the DA40, you've got a good bit of fiberglass, but also one thing you know about the DA40 is that rarely ever, or ever has there been a situation of fire. So again, God forbid, in a situation, if the airplane was to crash land or crash somewhere, you rarely do you have in a situation where the airplane will catch on fire, because they've designed it so well, and you've got a good amount of firewall that separates you from the engine bay. So this airplane is also safe in that aspect. Let me go up front to me where I would like to spend my time. Let's go to the front here. And you can tell this is an older plane. Also, when I think of the DA40, to me, it's the entry level to a modern airplane. Although I think you can get better performance and even better price with the Sling TSi, but you can actually find these planes that are maybe around this year, 2003, 2002, for much less, say $150,000 or so. You can find a nice DA40. Now, let's get up here. Easy entry, again, with the door. It's a canopy door up front, and it's pretty big. So with this, you get access to the front area. Let me show you what's happening here. Now, when I look at, from my own personal experience, being that this is the airplane where I learned how to fly, when I think of where my hands would be placed flying, this is also why I love the Sling TSi, because this airplane actually inspired me to get the TSi. When I think of the DA40 and I think of the Sling, they're pretty much the same airplane, except you get much better numbers in performance with the Sling TSi. But in terms of placement, where your middle stick, control stick is, you've got your middle panel here, and you can see one thing that differentiates these two is that the levers are thinner. So in the Sling, for example, you can have your whole entire fist on the throttle. And then also, this is, like I said, a constant speed prop. So you've got your prop lever, your mixture here. I remember learning how to lane peak, all of that with this airplane. And then right here, you've got cabin heat, okay? And this is your park and brake. And this is something actually that I wish I had, although it's manual because it's mechanical. All you do is this. And I've gotten so used to using this in the DA40 that I'm now learning how to use electric trim whenever I'm flying the Sling or any other modern airplane. But this is your nose trim. It works very nicely. And the great thing about this is that it's almost immediate feedback. Okay, so say for example, if you were using an electronic trim, for example, you'd have to push the button and then get the feel later, right? There's no immediate feel. Whereas you scroll this thing up or down, you can almost get a feedback immediately and see how balanced the airplane is. And that's why I like this. That's why I like the manual aspect of this. And now you look at your panel here. This is a steam gauge panel, although you've got some nice avionics there for your radio. So steam gauge, standard 6-pack, airspeed, altitude. No, that's not altitude. This is your altitude. And this is for your rudders. So with this ball, I remember when I was learning, they always say, press that ball in the middle. So this tells you your lateral movement. And then you've got your electronic switches down here. If you look in this airplane, you see also that the circuit breakers are sort of hidden. So you see them right below. Very clean. So that's another thing I like about the DA40. It's a very clean sheet. And then you've got your rudder pedals down there. Now, one thing about the DA40, again, this will be an issue of preference, is that you can see that the seats are a bit inclined, and I'll get in a little bit. But unlike other planes where you can maybe move the seats back and forth, it's the opposite with the DA40. You can pull and push your rudder pedals in, and that will give you, however tall you are, you can adjust that. But you can't, the seats are static. They're permanently placed where they are, so you cannot adjust the seats. All right, let me get in and show you somewhat of the comfort of this thing. To get in the DA40, another unique aspect, you've got your step up front here. Normally, in a lot of airplanes, you have it back there. And the airplane is low to the ground enough where you can just hop in. You don't need to step up. But up here, you can look at this airplane from afar and you see that it's a little bit inclined backwards. So usually the nose is a little bit high up, whereas the back and tail of the airplane is lower to the ground. So to get in, you got your step up, just hop in. And so let me show you. I'm getting in now, and it's fairly easy to step inside the plane. So guys, in the DA40, I can't say enough about this airplane. I spent so much hours in it. What I love and appreciate about it is my hand placement. So as I'm sitting, you see everything up front is permanent. Okay, so the stick comes through the middle of the seat. The seats are permanent. You can't adjust them. You can adjust your rudder pedal. In terms of comfort, these are not the most comfortable seats, but you get used to them if you're going for a long cross-country flight. Now, this airplane will go 500 to 600 miles. Although, what I will say is that once you fill up your fuel tanks, this becomes a 2 to 3 person airplane. So although you have 4 seats, the useful load is not that crazy. Again, that's another thing the Sling TSi has over this. But if you wanted to go 500, 600 miles, you cruise around 120, 130 knots, this is the airplane for you. So in terms of the comfort of the interior, I would say right now my feet are a little bit bent. So if I was flying this airplane today, I'd probably push the pedals a little bit, away from me. So like you see right now, let me show you. This is my position right now in the airplane, and so I can always adjust the pedal. You hear that? And then you can push them up or pull it towards you. So that's how the mechanics in this thing works. Let me show you a little bit also what we have up front here. So speaking about ergonomics and things being within reach, you've got your control stick right here. Your flaps, again, this is also what I'm used to for the most part when it comes to flaps. In my Sling TSi now, I can control my flaps from the control stick. But generally speaking, you've got this here, and what I love about this tug or this switch is you just go one, you see up, and I like that it's not so much degrees, but it rather tells you take off, landing. right? So, and also it marks the speeds at which you can reduce the flaps. So it's pretty awesome. And then those are the instruments I was showing you earlier. You've got the Garmin 1-2 here. So the GNS 530. Let me see if we can get closer. And you've also got the GNS 430. So works in sync. All Garmin panel here. You can train for your instrument rating, and also the DA40 does not have any de-icing equipment on board, so don't try to get that. And like I said, also doesn't have a parachute, but again, this airplane was not built for that. It's a fairly safe airplane. Actually, it's one of the safest airplanes you could possibly fly. One last thing I'll show you in the interior. You see here it says Hobbs. Normally this is on the panel here. As a matter of fact, if you have a DA40 with a G1000, you can get that data from your G1000. But this is a steam gauge, so this is where your Hobbs is placed. Now, let's talk numbers, okay? DA40 is a really good performer when you compare it to everything else in its class, especially during this time, the early 2000s. You can compare this airplane to maybe the 172, maybe even the 182, but the 182 is a bigger plane and is a more practical airplane. But when you compare this to the 172 or the Cherokee, maybe the Piper Cherokee 180, this airplane is a really good performer. In terms of your speed, I'll be frank with, the books may tell you can cruise 120 or 130, 140 knots. I know the new DA40s, you can cruise faster in them, but in my personal experience, and I flew a 2005 Diamond DA40, on a good day in the summer, I'm climbing between 500 and 600 feet per second, okay? Now, the newer DA40s, you can probably climb double that. But in a DA40 that's this old, you're looking at 500 to 600 feet per minute. And then in terms of your cruise, the cross-country flights that I went on, I was able to cruise anywhere from 120 to 125, 126 in that range. That's indicated, by the way. So your true airspeed could be in the 130s, maybe closer to 140 knots. And up in altitude, if you're indicating 120 knots, 125 knots, you could be up there in the 140 range. So this is a true cross-country airplane that can get you 140 knots easy. And the average fuel you're going to be burning in this airplane, 10 gallons. You can lean it a little bit. I've had moments where I've been able to lean to get about 9 or so gallons per hour. But on average, I would say to expect 10 gallons of fuel per hour for the Lycoming 180. Your stall speed, that's the most beautiful thing about this airplane. This is a plane that can fly slow, and it takes time for it to stall, okay? Stall speed with your flaps, 49 knots. Without the flaps, you're the early 50s. So between 51 and 53 knots, this airplane will stall, which is really low for an airplane in this category. And that's why it's a good trainer. So you have enough ample room to make any correction before this airplane stalls. And I would say learning power on stall in the DA40, you want to put your legs on the right rudder and keep that wing balanced. It's a pretty long wing, so you want to keep it balanced. Now, in terms of price, you may be able to find great deals on the DA40, say around $100,000. But at that price range, more than likely, it's got to need some work, all right? To buy a ready flying plane that's this old, you're probably looking more in the $150,000 range. And like I said, this is a really good airplane to get either as a first plane, to get your license in, to fly, hold on to as long as you want, and then you can sell it off and get something better, faster, whichever the case may be. All right, so this is my review of the Diamond DA40. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Again, this is my first initial contact with flying. It's a beautiful plane to fly, and it really is a true cross country. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. If this is your first time, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and a great way to support the channel is by becoming an MVP member. You can go to mojogrip.net/MVP and sign up there. And also make sure you subscribe to the smaller channel, MojoGrip Clips. And I'll catch you all on the next video. Peace.